welcome to day 11 of 30 days of devotion with Pastor Alex. I hope you're doing well and you are getting blessed by these sessions. Today, I want to head on to answer a couple of questions that I received when we talked about prayer last week. And I think in the last episode, I tried to answer one of the questions, but unfortunately, the video cut off at some point. And so I'm going to go over again that answer. And then a second question that we had. Someone asked the question, he said, God bless you for the insight, but please, I have a question. So when you pray and believe God has heard you and answered you, yet you keep repeating yourself every day for the same issue, is that not also doubting God? Now that's a very good question, which I think a lot of people might have. Now, from the question, he says, when you pray and you believe that God has heard you and answered you, but you keep repeating yourself every day for the same issue. Now, the issue about answers to prayers is that many times people are stereotypical in the sense of how they think God should answer their prayers. And I think I spoke about it in one of the sessions, using Naaman as an example, that when Naaman went to the prophet Elisha for healing concerning his leprous situation, his thought was that the prophet will come out and then the prophet would call upon God and lay hands on him so that he will be healed. But unbeknown to him, how God, by virtue of his prophet, wanted him to receive his healing was for him to wash in the Jordan 7 times. And when he washed in the Jordan 7 times, that's how he received answers to his prayers, or he received his healing. And so many times when you pray, now the first thing to look out for is what kind of answer am I believing God for? Or how do I know that my prayer is going to be answered? And I have learned from the Bible at least 3 ways that prayers are answered. Number 1 is that most prayers can be answered by divine insights, or God speaking to you. So it can come as a way of a revelation in a vision, a dream, or a prophecy, or God speaking directly to you by the inward witness. An example is when Daniel prayed. The Bible tells us that the answer to Daniel's prayer, when the angel came, he said, I have come to give you skill and understanding. So he fasted and prayed for 21 days. And the answer to his prayer was skill and understanding. The same way Elijah went to the caves or the mountains to pray. And the Bible said that he was looking out for something spectacular. There was a wind, there was a fire, there was an earthquake. And the Bible tells us that God was not in any one of them. But then he was in the still small voice. So the answer to his prayer was that still small voice that spoke to him. That still small voice that spoke to him. There are other cases where you know that you have an answer by what we call a note of victory. A note of victory where whilst you're praying and you're having heartfelt prayer, you just sense within yourself that this prayer has been answered, or there's a joy. There's something that bubbles up within you that gives you a confirmation that truly there is a release of an answer. The answer might not show up physically, or it might not be as a result of a physical manifestation. But then you have this sense of joy. You have this sense of fulfillment. You have this peace, inward peace within you that confirms with your spirit that indeed God has heard you, and then you have an answer to it. And then there's a third way where the prayer is answered by a physical manifestation. A physical manifestation. In the book of Acts chapter number 12, the Bible tells us that when Peter was arrested, the disciples began to pray. And the point of their prayer was that God will bring divine intervention to Peter. Now, they were in a room, in a house praying. And whilst they were praying, an angel of the Lord went to the prison and brought Peter out. They were praying, but they didn't know exactly how that prayer was going to be answered. But how they knew their prayer was answered was when Peter now walked to the place where they were having the prayer meeting. In fact, they were still praying. However, the answer had been released by God. Does that suggest that they don't have faith? No, it doesn't. But then they were exercising what we call importunity in prayer. importunity in prayer where you pray continuously and ceaselessly. Don't forget the Bible tells us, pray without ceasing. So clearly in the case of the Acts chapter 12 situation, whilst they were praying, the answer was released, but yet they were still praying. That doesn't communicate a lack of faith or doubt in their hearts. But then I think that it was the importunity and the urgency of the matter that caused them to keep praying. And I don't think that God gets offended by that. God is not offended by that. And I'm going to give you two other examples about where some key figures in the Bible prayed more than once. And before I give you those examples, I'll just take you back to Matthew chapter 6. I think that's where some of these questions will come from, where the Bible tells us that we should not pray like the commoners, because they think that by their vain babblings and repetitions they will be heard. Now, he was talking about the hypocrites, because for them, what they did was that they thought that prayer was all about shouting and shouting and shouting and speaking so many words. But in that scope of prayer that Jesus was talking about, there was no involvement of their hearts. So their heart was far from what they were praying. And that's where Jesus alluded that it is not by the repetition of words that gets prayer answered. But in our case, when you repeat the same prayer point, it doesn't communicate doubt. For example, Jesus in Matthew chapter 26, in the Garden of Gethsemane, when he went to pray with the disciples, the Bible tells us that he started praying, and for an hour he came back to check on the disciples, and they were sleeping. So he came to sort of wake them up to say, you guys need to pray. And the Bible is clear to tell us that when he went back, he prayed saying the same words. And then he came back again the second time to check on the disciples, and went back for the third time to pray saying the same words. So on 3 different occasions, he was praying saying the same words. Would you think that Jesus was praying out of doubt? No. But again, it's because of the importunity, the urgency of the matter. He just wanted to exercise himself in prayer so that he can obtain the needed answer. And the Bible tells us that at the end of his prayer meeting, that angels came to minister strength to him. So for him, there was a ministration of the Spirit to him that communicated the answer to his prayer. Another example is the Apostle Paul. And the Bible tells us that when the Apostle Paul prayed in 2 Corinthians chapter 15, he says that concerning these things, I besought the Lord 3 times. And then he said, my grace is sufficient for you. So same issue, he went to the Lord for 3 times. And the Lord said, my grace is sufficient for you. And so if you find yourself in a position where you are praying about something, now you have to look out, do I have the answer? If you have the answer, then settle in your heart that you have it. If the answer came as a note of victory or a prophecy, then follow on, be committed to that prophecy, meditate on it, and expect that prophecy to manifest itself. If you had a note of victory, and that note of victory also means that there should be a physical manifestation, know that there has been a down payment to the answer to your prayer, which is the prophecy or the note of victory. Keep relying on God to bring to pass the physical manifestation. If the prayer to your the answer to your prayer is an impression or a leading of the Spirit or an instruction to do something, that will mean that when you do what God has asked you to do, you see the results. Moses went to pray when he was cast between the Egyptians and then the Red Sea. God said, move forward. When he moved forward, that's where he saw the full manifestation of the answer to his prayers. And again, the last one is a physical manifestation where you pray through until something indeed happens, until something physically tangible happens. I hope this has well explained the question. And if you have any further questions, let me know in the comments and I'll address them in the next episode.